Welcome to my final project, a video showcase from our QOTL 2 Summer 2023 class. Throughout this time together, I was exploring my peer review outlining assignment from my public speaking class. This class provided me the opportunity to enhance the review of my outline assignment with my class with the various categories over our time was Category A2 Course Facilitation, Category B1 Student Interaction, Category C3 Grading and Feedback. Also, I add a little caveat to the equity and inclusiveness component, and throughout this experience, it has really contributed to my visioning of a more equitable and inclusive style of instruction. So for Category A2, the course facilitation, there are three parts to this: the preparation phase, the class session agenda, and the concluding phase. Now, in order for the student to be prepared to come to class and review another student's outline, there's a variety of back work that needs to happen before we get to the class session. First and foremost, they must read Chapter 8 from Public Speaking, Your Pathway to Success, and that chapter deals with outlining and organizing your thoughts. Next, I have a lecture that I recorded on how to outline, and I actually go over the complete sentence outline checklist. Before coming to class, I need them to download the complete sentence outline checklist, and I developed this checklist because of the common errors usually made on outlines. And so I documented those errors. So as you can see, here's our checklist. I have a variety of different areas, criteria that I want the student to be able to meet. And usually when you look at an outline, you just simply go down the checklist, you can catch 100% of the errors. Now the goal of this checklist and the rubric that I developed for our course is so that students can have perfect outlines when they turn in their final assignment. So what I did was, when I created the rubric, I used all of these guys as my criteria. And then what I did was I set up a scoring system ranging from number 5, excellent, 4 good, 3 satisfactory, 2 is less than satisfactory. And then I got a 0 here for poor. For each of those criterias we learned from our checklist, that reflects the rubric that I created. So when a student looks at an outline, they're going to be able to just fill in the points on their end, as well as when I do my work looking at the outlines, I will also assign points. So this will let the student know where their areas of strengths and weaknesses are in their outlining development. So now we've made it over to the class session, and here's the agenda. So we come into class. I usually have the students work 30 minutes on an outline. So they should have their checklist with them. They know what they're looking for. And at the 15-minute mark, I usually check in to see how people's progress is going. So while they're doing that, I'm going through all of the outlines in class so that when we reconvene, I can discuss all the feedback from my observations and what the student received from their peer. Furthermore, when the class does get reconvened, each outline from the student will be projected up on the big screen, and we'll go over all the comments. We'll go over all the comments that were made on the outline. And so the student gets a lot of one-on-one attention on their work. As I mentioned earlier, I really stress the application of the criteria on the checklist to reinforce the textbook chapter and the video lecture lessons. Again, my goal is that the student gets a perfect outline so that when it comes time to submit for a final score, they get full points on that. Now the concluding phase. So now that the students have their marching orders and now they know what corrections they need to make on their outline, their job is to take that feedback and make those adjustments on their outline. Because I've already gone through their outlines individually and then in class, I get very familiar with each student's outline, where they were on course, where were they off course, so that when it comes time for me to grade the final outline that's being submitted, I know exactly what I'm looking for. So once they get done making those corrections, now they are in the next phase of their speech development, and that is practicing their delivery. Now you notice my little icon here. That's a public speaker. He's showing good nonverbal communication using his hand gestures, which is always good to reinforce particular points. However, that also could be a picture of me when I look at the final outlines and the student does not make any of the corrections that their peers recommended and what I told them. Sometimes I just throw my hands up in the air. Such is life. Next category is B1, student interaction. So here I have interaction with the students before the semester begins, developing a class culture of belonging, and then of course we're going to highlight the different types of interaction. Student to content, student to student, student to professor, professor to student, and student to the world. So about a week before the semester starts, I usually send them an email welcoming them to the class. By then, I would have a YouTube video with a course orientation. And in that course orientation, I go over the syllabus in great detail. Then I give them a tour of the public speaking textbook that we're going to be using. Everything from how to purchase the book to the various parts in the chapter, as well as where they can access quizzes, where they can access PowerPoint presentations, and additional resources that they can use, such as our checklist that we've been talking about. And then finally, I give them a Canvas tour showing them all the assignments, all the due dates, so they know exactly what to expect. So all of that stuff gets into their calendars for them to be able to track. Now, as part of my SLO coverage on my syllabus, I'm very, very specific that the SLOs and the course objectives come directly from the official course outline of record. I really want them to have that sense of consistency, that these are the SLOs, here are how your assignments meet those SLOs. Oftentimes, there's a lot of distractions, and I want us to stay on task. Building a class culture is probably one of my more top priorities as a teacher. The bad rap on me is I take a very long time to take roll because I ask the students, how are they doing? How are their classes? How's work? It may seem as very trivial as to what I'm doing, but the overarching philosophy that I believe in is that if we're able to talk about nothing, it allows us to talk about something. And so the something is going to be perhaps a serious issue that's going on with the individual student that is serving as an interference into their progress. It could be when we really start talking about nuts and bolts of outlining and delivery, and our hands are getting really dirty in preparing for our speech. That's a something. However, the trust and the rapport need to be established and maintained throughout the entire semester. Oftentimes what happens too is that once students get rolling on what's going on with their work and their life and where they went to high school and things like that and what they did over the weekend, oftentimes other students ask questions. So now the students are now beginning to engage each other in class. So as the trust develops among the class, it pays big dividends when assignments are required, especially to the student-to-student interaction in peer review work. So for the student content interaction, I'm very detailed on how to prepare for a public speaking event. I'm very thorough on how to select a topic, their purpose, the research, how to outline, understanding the audience, delivering practice speeches, and refining their thoughts. One of the things that I constantly do is I always refer back to the content and how it specifically relates to each student and their success. Because inherently as an audience member, as a student, the question we ask is, what's in it for me? How am I going to better myself as a result of this content and this information? So I'm constantly driving that. So many of my students want to go work in industry, become teachers, become musicians. And in the field of communication, a lot of these theories and ideas and content are very easy to connect to what matters most to the student. Now, as I mentioned earlier, the student-to-student interaction, usually I'm taking roll. We're asking questions of each other. Rapports are being developed and a chemistry for the class is starting to develop. And so as the semester goes on, we tend to care about each other and really want to help each other succeed in our course together. And then we also have peer review work that we do throughout the semester, and this rapport helps each of the students work together to improve their work in our public speaking class. The students' interaction with the world is critically important in my class because when it comes to topic selection for assignments and then like the major speeches of the semester, that's up to the student to come up with. And I strongly encourage that these topics and assignment ideas reflect their cultures, interests, current affairs, because I want them to be able to see how they be able to connect the world to public speaking and how that impacts other people. Now, one caveat regarding topics and examples of assignments that the students might bring up: they must be in accordance to what the assignment is asking for. So for example, if we're doing an informative speech, I don't want a student saying something like global warming should be stopped immediately, because that is a speech to persuade and not a speech to inform. So that way I get dialed in and saying we got to modify the topic that you want to do on global warming, let's say, so that is appropriate for each of the assignments. The professor-driven interaction with the student, again, as I mentioned earlier, before the semester I send out the orientation video, I send out an email welcoming them to the class with the syllabus. I also use the announcement function on Canvas, and I set that up at the beginning of the semester with regular announcements being sent so that there is a constant interaction electronically with the student. I also share that my preferred method of communication is through Canvas email, and that I be able to get back to them in 24 to 48 hours. Since my online classes are hybrid, usually what happens is we meet in class and I ask the students questions to see where they are, how are they doing, and that sort of thing. So we build a face-to-face presence and then in conjunction with the online presence. So it's a nice 1-2 punch there. Moreover, if I need to speak to a student about the progress or lack of progress in their course, I usually schedule an office hour appointment so we can just kind of talk and see what's going on. Moreover, at the beginning of the semester, I have all of their assignments in the calendar, so they usually get alerts that, hey, we have an assignment that's due. In addition, the content I have on Canvas has my classroom lectures on YouTube, and so that is another way to stay in contact with the class content and their learning. Student-professor contact, usually this comes in the form of an email from the Canvas inbox. Students usually ask questions in our in-person session, and students often utilize the drop-in office hours either in person or virtually. But usually we're able to connect face-to-face. Their questions, their concerns oftentimes drive what we'll be discussing for the day. My third area was C3, grading and feedback. And so this was the development of a rubric for the peer review of the complete sentence outline for the speech to inform. So let's go take a look at the outline checklist, and then we'll take a look on how I translated that into a rubric. So I've shown you this speech to inform preparation outline checklist, and for each of these boxes, these are the criteria that I look for in outlines. As you can see, I'm pretty persnickety about all the things that I look for. And then what I did was I took each of these criterias and made a point system for fulfilling each of those points. So for example, headings. So I require that all their headings are centered and labeled. And so if they have them centered and labeled, they get 5 points. If the headings are labeled but not centered, I give them 3. Not all headings are labeled and centered. That's 2, less than satisfactory. And then some students decide we're not going to put headings, so that's 0 for poor. And I run through the same scale of from excellent to poor. Usually excellent is 5, poor is 0. I have good, which is a 4. Satisfactory is 3. Sometimes less than satisfactory is a 2. But I had that, and so this was a big stride I made in our class together, finally putting a rubric to this so the students can use this when they peer review their classmates, but also when I look at outlines, I can use this rubric to make life a lot easier for all those involved. An additional phase is the equitable and inclusive instruction, and so a few of the areas that I highlight are the accessibility, clear communication expectations, student interaction, and grading and feedback. So a lot of these things we've covered in the previous areas that I worked on, but here I want to go into a little bit more depth as it relates to equity. So the QOTL 2.0 experience has provided insights in creating accessible course materials, such as alternative text for images, captioning videos, and structuring content for screen readers. So I also rely on Canvas to help me make sure I'm in compliance to serve all those students. Also, clear expectations and communications is absolutely critical. One of the common forms of chaos we see in the workplace is that people aren't sure what their charge is. They don't know, and they don't have clear directions as to this is what we're supposed to do and these are the outcomes. And that is something that I've really strived to do very well in my teaching, is that every student knows exactly what is expected of them. Very straightforward. I don't like moving the goalpost. I don't like doing any of that stuff. So by ensuring clarity and transparency in the course facilitation, it can create more of an inclusive environment where all students understand what is expected of them. Student interaction, promoting inclusive discussions, encouraging active participation from all students, and valuing their contribution. You can relate it to a classroom culture that respects and values different viewpoints. QOTL showed features such as collaborative work, group assignments, peer reviews, and discussion boards as a way for students to interact. Group activities also provide opportunities for students to work together, facilitate interactions, promoting teamwork, peer learning, and the exchange of ideas among students from diverse backgrounds. I think that's where really the richness of our learning comes from our classrooms. Grading and feedback, so the objective and fair assessment by using rubrics makes it very easy and cut and dry as to what is expected, and this is why you got the grade you got. This also eliminates any discriminatory biases, contributing to an equitable evaluation of student work. Also, timely and constructive feedback is absolutely critical. I'm a real stickler in getting a turnaround time for assignments between 1 day and 1 week, because students need to know how they're doing in the class throughout the entire semester. In conclusion, moving on, I plan on developing more rubrics for my existing assignments. I think it builds a lot more clarity and more of an equitable understanding of what is expected. In addition, I plan on utilizing the analytics function for the collection of student learning outcome data. I realize that rubrics contribute to a level playing field for all students, regardless of their backgrounds and circumstances. In addition, it promotes fairness, clear expectations, and consistency while accommodating diverse learning needs, encouraging self-assessment and goal setting, and facilitating effective feedback and communication. Outside of the classroom, I think a big area of improvement that is needed on my part is utilizing the Canvas analytical function for the collection of data for our department SLO. So we do our SLOs every semester, and usually what happens is at the end of the semester I have a spreadsheet, I have to put everyone's name in, and then I have to start assigning points, let's say, for the various SLOs that each of these students completed throughout the entire semester, so we can get a sense as to what's working and what's not working. And frankly, this data collection has been very time-consuming and cumbersome, and just one more thing to have to do. The analytic functions can streamline our process for continuous improvement, so I plan on implementing that as we move forward. And how can we end our class time together without thanking our fabulous facilitators? So Miss Bianca and Miss Donna, thank you so much for your guidance and patience throughout our time together in our QOTL 2 class over the summer of 2023. So thank you very much for all of your time, your effort in making this a good experience for all of us.